Yeah, so
Yes.
today we're actually very, very happy to have Johan Chang from University of Zurich. And I actually sort of know Johan for quite some time, but since he was actually a graduate student, right? With ETH, right? Also with PSI, right? Yeah, doing a
Yes.
lot of neutron scattering and RICS. So he's actually an absolute expert on RICS, on doing different materials, and also doing neutron scattering, working on cuprids and various other materials. So today, actually, I get him to talk something that's actually somewhat different, because I saw his a very nice PrAlGe paper talking about anomalous Hall effect in a ferromagnetic Weyl semimetal. So I find this paper quite fascinating. I want him to sort of give a broader introduction of what is going on in this field, and then talk about his research. Yeah. Okay. Here you go, Johan.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for the invitation, and thanks for having me and the opportunity to present our work here. So this work on anomalous Hall effect in Weyl semimetals is really the work of Ola Forslund, and some of the data that he with the ARPES data in this work is collected by Masafumi Holio, who is now at the Tokyo University, and also by Qi Wang, who is now professor at the Chinese University in Hong Kong. Let's see if I can change slide here. So I would pick up from last time where we had a talk on heavy fermion physics, and there was this phase diagram presented with a 122 compound, and here we have in a sense, this is just one phase diagram with temperature and magnetic field, and there's a phase transition into an antiferromagnetic state, and then there's a superconducting state. And so this, for me, represents a typical phase diagram where we have a hierarchy of symmetry breaking, first into magnetic phase, and then superconductivity. I could present many different phase diagram. One phase diagram that came to my attention recently is this of europium aluminium 4, where they have, again, we have temperature and magnetic field, and we have a very complex set of magnetic phases. And as you cool down into these phases, we have a sequence of symmetry breaking. So phase 3, for example, and 4 here, they are hosting chiral magnetism, and this chiral magnetism is connected to a structural phase transition. So we have a monoclinic structure that allows this chiral magnetism. So these are, to say, the topic for my talk would be these phase transitions, where we have symmetry breaking, and that there's typically a kind of a hierarchy of symmetry breakings. I stumbled on in preparation for this talk on this paper here. This is in crystallography, where these authors, they introduce their paper with this French proverb that says that hierarchies like shelves, the higher they are, the less useful they are. And so, of course, this can, I'm not going into the interpretation in terms of social science or politics. For me, in our field, this would kind of mean that lower symmetry is leading us to interesting physics. So the lower we are in symmetry, the more interesting physics we have. Now, when we get something, we have to give something. So very often when we have a lowering of symmetry, then we get domains, and these domains are often challenging our experiments, and so typically we like to get rid of these domains. Here, this is an example of calcium ruthenate, a bilayer ruthenate, where we have a strong orthorhombicity, and with that we get these orthorhombic domains that you can see within a polarized light microscope. So I mentioned these domains. These are really a challenge to many experiments. Again, I stay in crystallography, crystal structure refinement. Here's a recent study of this is a re-examination of this iridium compound here, where we have dimer or dimerization. And so they did X-ray diffraction. And so here we have the diffraction pattern at the high temperature. And in the middle here, we have the low temperature data, where we have additional super lattice peak. And these peaks are, I would say, with these peaks, you can resolve this dimerization. The problem is that we have 4 domains, and so these data sets are huge. You have to, differentiate these different domains. And so this was the challenge that these authors took up, that they indexed not only the peaks, but also the domains. And with that, they came to a better solution than that of the previous study, some more than about 25 years ago. So this was one painstaking way of solving the domain problem. There's other examples or strategies to overcome this domain problem. Here, this is work of from Paul Atfield on a magnetite compounds. They also reported some very exotic dimerization. But here you see that data of a very small grain of 40 micrometer. This is one with 100 micrometer. And so you see this 100 micrometer has multiple domains. And so these data are extremely difficult to interpret. And so their success was that by finding or isolating out a 40 micrometer grain, they could resolve this trimeron structure in magnetite. Here's another strategy from my own group. So this is a lanthanum-based cuprate, where we have this special 1,8 doping that leads to this stripe order. And I'm saying stripe because maybe I should not say stripe. This is basically, it was for a long time unclear whether in this particular lanthanum compound, whether we had stripes or a rotational or 2Q structure. So the experiment always showed these 4 charge order reflections. And now with uniaxial pressure, Johan Chang, a former postdoc of my group, coming professor at the University of Seoul, by applying uniaxial pressure, he could basically remove this domain degeneracy and get a single domain. And with that, he could conclude that actually the structure is a single Q structure, and so that we have a stripe order. And this led to an experiment, Newton experiment led by Gilminas Simotis and Daniel Mazzone, where they did the same experiments, but on the magnetic incommensurate order. And so this is very challenging experiment where, because the uniaxial pressure cell allows only very small samples, and the neutron scattering cross-section is weak. And so they needed to basically focus the neutron beam on the sample, and in this way they managed to do the experiment. So without uniaxial pressure, we have these 2 domains, and then they applied the uniaxial pressure, and then you see that one domain is disappearing, and only the other direction remains. So this is basically telling uniaxial pressure is another way to lift this degeneracy. And so once you have lifted degeneracy, here's a case of calcium rutinates, that I showed in the beginning. If you can get a single domain, then you can basically also see, so this is a structural domain, but this also translates into the electronic sector. And so with this single domain structure of calcium rutinate, you can probe the with ABES here, very anisotropic electronic band structure, and that translates into a so-called nematic resistivity. And
So,
so
in
here,
this case, Johan,
yeah.
in this case, which method is used to detwin it? Pressure?
For the ABES, we were detwinning it in our home lab.
I see.
So by warming up and applying uniaxial pressure, we got rid of the domains, and
then you took it to synchrotron. I see.
Yeah, and then we went to a synchrotron. This resistivity work here is from it's not from our group, and I believe they they probably did similar things, or they selected a crystal that were from the beginning mono domain.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Please interrupt me on the way. So I'm slowly coming to ferromagnetic domains. So when we have ferromagnetism, we can also have domains that effectively would give a zero magnetic or zero effective zero magnetization. And then with a magnetic field, one can align these domains. So this is for ferromagnetism, magnetic field is a way to get a mono domain. And if you have a mono domain, you can then hope to observe anomalous Hall effect, which requires an internal time reversal symmetry breaking. I'm not an expert on anomalous Hall, at least not in the theoretical sense. So there's this beautiful review paper here from 2010 on anomalous Hall effect, and so there's basically they are classifying 3 types of anomalous Hall effect. So there's the screw scattering and the side jump and the intrinsic anomalous Hall effect. And in this more recent paper here, they kind of give these 3 anomalous Hall effect different regions in this anomalous Hall conductivity, which is the longitudinal conductivity. I'm going to speak a lot about the intrinsic anomalous Hall effects. So this is one that requires a Berry phase curvature. But before I go further along that line, I just want to show some classical anomalous Hall effect data. So this is a molybdenum oxide compound where they measured the Hall effect as function of magnetic field, and at 100 Kelvin, you have basically a almost linear Hall effect as function of magnetic field. In contrast, and so the important thing at 100 Kelvin is that it goes to zero at zero magnetic field. So at zero magnetic field, we have no Hall effect. But at 2 Kelvin, you see that the Hall effect is just rising, and we have a finite Hall effect at zero magnetic field. And so this is kind of the classical anomalous Hall effect. And here's another example from a gallium manganese arsenide sample, where you have the Hall effect as function of temperature, and you see when you go below a certain transition, you get a finite anomalous Hall effect. So in zero magnetic field, you have a Hall effect. Now, more recent years, anomalous Hall effect has been, or the definition maybe has been softened a bit. That here we have anomalous Hall effect as function of magnetic fields, and if you look at the blue curve, we have the anomalous Hall effect as function of field. So this is the Hall effect as function of field, but you can see that at zero field, it crosses zero. So in principle, in the classical sense, we have no anomalous Hall effect. But if you were to extrapolate this blue curve here from high field, it would extrapolate to a finite value. And so I think this is what they mean with anomalous Hall effect in this context here. So here's yet another example. This is from one of these new, relatively new kagome metals, where you have a charge order, but also anomalous Hall effect has been observed. So in the first panel A here, we have anomalous Hall effect as function of magnetic field, and at high temperature, so 50 Kelvin here, the Hall curve is almost linear and going through zero, and in fact all the curves is basically going through zero. Over here we have in the inset even higher temperatures, and so at high temperature basically all the curves are linear going through zero, so normal conventional Hall effect, nothing anomalous. But then you see at low temperature again it's going through zero, but if you were to extrapolate these plateaus here, you would get a finite Hall effect. And so that's also, I think, what they refer to when they title it anomalous Hall effect. So now I'm coming slowly to our system. So we have been studying praseodymium, aluminium, germanium. And this is a system where the crystal structure is breaking inversion symmetry, and with that we have Weyl points in the band structure. And then at around 15 Kelvin, there's a time reversal symmetry breaking into a ferromagnetic state. And so we have a transition from a paramagnet into a ferromagnet. And so this is with these Weyl points, we have a Barry curvature, and so we have the possibility of an intrinsic anomalous Hall effect in this system.
So can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
So in this particular case, I mean, typically it's the ferromagnetism that gives rise to anomalous Hall, right? So in this case, one expect the anomalous Hall is actually induced by sort of the purely electronic Weyl semimetal case, or because the Weyl semimetal, because you have this two poles?
Yes. So I think I mean, in this how to say, in the, maybe I'm answering a bit broadly, but I think this intrinsic Hall effect has been known for many years, and then
right.
In this with the field of topology coming up with the Dirac fermions and then the Weyl fermions, then I'd say many of these system was revisited, and suddenly you could describe the Hall effect with these Weyl fermions. And so we expect actually that, well, it's maybe I take the conclusions for how to say for given. Maybe we're not expecting it, but as you will see in when we progress in these slides, we actually describe the anomalous Hall effect from a pure electronic model, including these Weyl. So this is coming. This is my conclusion that comes in a few slides.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So we were at that time we were looking into this the Hall effect inside this ferromagnetic state, and so we measured the magnetic moment, and so the magnetization, and so you see when as you cool into this ferromagnetic state, you get a magnetization, and you also see that there's some a second transition around 10 Kelvin where you get a kind of glass-like behavior in the magnetization. Then we did the Hall effect experiments, again as a function of temperature here for different magnetic fields, and you see a good correlation between the magnetization and the Hall effect. So at relative large magnetic field, we have this kind of order parameter temperature dependence, and these glassy effects that we see at low field is also replicated in the Hall effect. And so maybe this is my first conclusion that how to say that the Hall effect is scaling with the magnetization, and that's an indication that we have this kind of that the Hall effect is given by the intrinsic magnetic field in the ferromagnetic state. So we went on to measure Hall effect as function of magnetic field. So this is isotherms at 100 Kelvin, so far away from the transition. The isotherm here is completely straight, and so conventional Hall effect, nothing anomalous, and at 25 very similar. But then if you cool into this ferromagnetic state, we see that now we have very nonlinear Hall effect, and as a function of fields. And what we did, the way we interpreted at the time was that basically we have these kind of domains, and so when we apply magnetic field, we align these domains, and so it takes some magnetic fields until we have the anomalous Hall effect. So we were kind of extrapolating, it's not a high field, but this, how to say, above a half a Tesla data, and in this way we got out the anomalous Hall effect. So this was kind of our assumption, and I think others in the field are doing something very similar. So this is very common, how to say, data structure. We went on to also measure the Nernst effect as function of magnetic field, and here we again saw that at 100 Kelvin we have straight linear isotherms indicating a very conventional Nernst effect, and then inside the ferromagnetic state we again saw the same structure as in the Hall effect, that there's an initial steep slope, and then there's a kind of a saturation, and we could extrapolate this saturating Nernst effect and extract in this way the anomalous Nernst effect. And so over in the last diagram of panel C here, we are plotting the Hall conductivity in blue as a function of temperature, and we see that there's an onset at the onset of ferromagnetism, and we also plotted here the anomalous Nernst effect, and also there's a, how to say, the two effects are basically scaling, so coming from the same symmetry, time versal symmetry breaking in the ferromagnetic state. So now I come maybe to your question, in that we were calculating, so modeling the anomalous Nernst and the Hall effect through these Weyl points. So this is the group of Titus Neubert. They calculated from the electronic band structure, they calculated the anomalous Hall effect and the anomalous Nernst effect. And for me, it was quite very important to have both quantities measured and calculated. So here in blue is the Hall effect. Blue line is calculated, and the red diamond here is the experiment, and in green is the calculated Nernst effect, and the purple diamond here is the experiment. So we find overall good agreement on two transport coefficient, and so we concluded that this anomalous Hall and Nernst effect that we have observed is in good agreement with what you expect from these Weyl points in the electronic band structure. There's a work from the Hassan group that around the same time that came to a very similar conclusion. They were measuring these Weyl points with photo emission, and they also calculated the Hall response. And I think there's very good agreement between these two studies. Good. So that was the introduction. So we basically are speaking, or we believe that the anomalous Hall effect in these praseodymium, aluminium, germanium is well described by this intrinsic effect where we have to include the Berry phase curvature. Yeah, so that was around 2020. Then Ola came and he noticed that if we look very carefully at the normal state, so in the paramagnetic phase, so in this temperature regime above 15 Kelvin, then we can continue this extrapolation procedure that we did at low temperatures. In purple here we have an extrapolation, and this was this extrapolated signal here was what we attributed to the anomalous Hall from the electronic band structure. And so if you make at 30 Kelvin this extrapolation, you actually find a finite value of the Hall effect. And so this was then the starting point of our problem. So we now have, in some sense, a problem in that we have a paramagnet, so there's no a priori time reversal symmetry breaking. And you kind of the problem is say more general in the sense that it's seen in other compounds. So if you take the blue line here, and this was this kagome system, and if we extrapolate that one from the high field, we would also not go through zero. So that here also there is a if we use this method, there's a an extrapolated anomalous Hall effect at these 50 Kelvin, and it's maybe even more clear at 35 Kelvin. So then the question is whether this kind of extrapolated anomalous Hall effect can be taken as evidence for time reversal symmetry breaking. Ola he then got these MUSR data and different temperatures. At low temperature, there's the ferromagnetism that leads to this relaxation, but at 30 Kelvin, there's no evidence of magnetism or static ferromagnetic order from MUSR, which is one of the most sensitive technique to magnetism. So there's no evidence from MUSR for a time reversal symmetry breaking. With ARBES, we extended the work of Hassan that their group focused a lot on at the low temperature, and they identified these Weyl points. We then did the 25 Kelvin, so that's in the paramagnetic state, and we see basically no difference in the band structure. So these Weyl point structures persist into the paramagnetic state. This led us to the kind of the discussion of these this extrapolated ferromagnetic or anomalous Hall effect. So we basically we see that in the normal state. But we are not having any evidence of time reversal symmetry breaking. So the group again of Titus Neubert, they modeled then these Hall effect experiments through a mean field theory, so that basically the magnetization has a dependence of the external applied magnetic fields. And so in this way, they mimic with their modeling the experimental results. So this is a fairly good agreement. And so this led us to the conclusion that this kind of anomalous Hall effect in quotation mark is basically field induced, and so we are not having any per se time reversal symmetry breaking. And so basically the conclusion is that I come up as a conclusion with this, how to say, picture of the Japanese garden with a pond where they deliberately have made these stepping stones in such an irregular way that and I think the purpose is that you have to pay attention when you cross the pond. And I think the same. I'm trying to say that with these re-extrapolated anomalous Hall effects, we have to be very careful. We should not immediately jump over to the conclusion that we have a time reversal symmetry breaking. So these basically we gave an example here of an extrapolated anomalous Hall effect where basically there's no, I say, intrinsic time reversal symmetry breaking. It's induced by the magnetic field that works through the magnetization. So yeah, that's the conclusion. And with that, I'm at the end of my talk, and I thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Johan. Very, very interesting. So are you basically suggesting then that the experiment that's done on 135, which is non-magnetic, could
Yes.
potentially also be misinterpreted?
Yes, yeah, that's why I mean, I'm not. I think if we go, I'm not putting up a too strong criticism, but I'm saying like it's clear that there's like if we take the low temperature
Right, right,
data, it's pretty clear that, how to say, that there is a something very nonlinear going on.
right, right, right.
Um, But where I'm, how to say, and we did the same. I showed you, right, in
Hmm,
our
hmm.
praseodymium, aluminium, germanium, that we extrapolated this. We ran into problems when, as you warm up, you kind of, this extrapolation is getting more and more, how to say, difficult to make in a sense. I mean, we can make the extrapolation, but at some point
Right,
the
right.
effects is getting very weak, and that's where I'm saying one should be careful um, with these extrapolations, and maybe one should maybe, as I'm maybe a very scattering dominated thinking person, so I would, how to say, rely on evidence of from direct evidence of time reversal symmetry breaking rather than um, these extrapolations of the Hall effects. I'm saying is dangerous at high temperature.
Right, right, right. No, I
Yeah.
actually quite agree with you. I mean, because even up to now, the time reversal symmetry breaking evidence for the strong sim, I mean, for this 135 vanadium is very, controversial, right?
Yes.
To say the
Yes.
least. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But,
Yes. Yes.
mhm. But let me try to understand you a bit better. I mean, so are you basically saying that in your system, when you go above the paramagnetic state, the entire anomalous Hall of supposedly seen is purely due to sort of a Weyl semimetal effect, right? Purely
Yes.
electronic, has nothing to do with time reversal symmetry breaking. That's the key message of your paper, right?
Um, it still has to do with so let me see if I
Hmm.
here in this
Yeah,
this
yeah,
work here.
yeah, 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 yeah.
It's still it is breaking so the while points comes from the inversion symmetry breaking.
Okay.
and the ferromagnetism is then breaking time reversal symmetry.
I see. But you've seen the anomalous Hall even in the paramagnetic state, right? When there's no, you know, time reversal symmetry breaking from ferromagnetism.
Yes. And that's how to say this, the second part of this, how to say, study of praseodymium, aluminium, germanium.
Right.
So we started by studying the low temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So inside the ferromagnetic phase, and we found good agreement with the Weyl points.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they are split further by this ferromagnetism.
Right.
Then the paramagnetic phase, then yeah, Ola noticed that if we extrapolate, we actually have a small
Mm-hmm.
finite,
Yeah,
maybe
intersection, right?
again in quotation mark, anomalous Hall.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
And then now that became, in some sense, the interpretation of that is described in this paper that you saw.
Right.
And what we are, or Ola figured out, is that there is, I mean, he really checked, there's no static ferromagnetism. So this phase diagram here holds that the onset is really around 15 Kelvin, and after that we have a paramagnet.
I see. I see. I see. I see.
And then we did the ARPAS experiments, and we believe that these Weyl points are still there in the electronic structure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they are coming from the, let's see if I can get it back. These are coming from the
Inversion
inversion
symmetry, right?
symmetry that
Mm-hmm.
remains all along.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we have the um, then we have the problem, in a sense, that how to say, we need how to say, we have a region of where we have time reversal symmetry breaking from the ferromagnetism. And there we have the anomalous Hall that we have calculated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we have another region about in the paramagnetic state where we have no time reversal symmetry breaking
Mm-hmm.
from μSR. So we have no magnetism that breaks time reversal symmetry. And so the interpretation is instead that the magnetization has a magnetic field effect.
Mm-hmm.
So the magnetization depends on the external magnetic field.
So time reversal symmetry is breaking by the external field, not intrinsically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have a how to say, a field-induced time reversal symmetry breaking, rather than a kind of spontaneous time reversal symmetry breaking. And so this anomalous Hall effect that we see in the experiments is here interpreted differently from inside, so the blue curve here we interpret it as coming from the spontaneously broken time reversal symmetry, whereas the extrapolated green one is interpreted as a consequence of the field dependence of the magnetization in the paramagnetic state. And so what we kind of conclude from this is that we should be careful with these extrapolations,
I
because
understand. Mm-hmm.
it looks so similar, right? We could conclude the same for the green and the blue curve.
Right.
If
Yeah.
we do
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
we would conclude that there's a time reversal symmetry breaking, intrinsic time reversal symmetry breaking in the paramagnetic state.
Yeah, that's clearly not true. Yeah, because even in the order state, you have two components, right? You have a intrinsic component and also external field,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So
Yes.
you're just saying that the intrinsic component, vanishes about Tc. Well,
Yes.
the entire thing is induced by the time reversal symmetry is induced by the externally applied magnetic field.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So then, do you know of any examples where the there's a spontaneous time symmetry breaking in the paramagnetic state, for in which people have seen, claim to have seen anomalous Hall.
Um,
I mean, besides 135, 135 is
135, yes.
yeah,
There
135 is sort of a
was,
claim, right?
yes. Um, Let me see if I'm going backwards. There was another example here.
Yeah. For example,
Now I
this
didn't
particular case,
show,
yeah, yes,
this is
no
low
magnetism, right?
temperature. And I should maybe look in the paper whether they have high temperature data, but I'm thinking that all these systems here where we kind of extrapolate, where I'd
I
say the
see,
Hall
I
effect
see,
is
I
going through
see.
zero. This is low temperature data for different angles. This is very clear at low temperature.
Hmm.
But I think all these cases where we have kind of this structure of the Hall effect, it does go through zero, and we only get it through extrapolation. As we warm up, we have to be very careful with, I mean, the Hall effect, anomalous Hall effect would get weaker and weaker and weaker, right? And then at some point, um, the question is whether if it extends into the, how to say, beyond, if we have no musa or neutron scattering evidence, and we only rely on the Hall effect, then I would be very
Cautious, right?
careful
Hmm.
with the conclusions at high
No.
temperature.
I think you have a very good point. I mean, but for this particular material that was published, right, in Nature Physics, there's not
Yeah.
even any magnetism, right, that we can see, right? There's no magnetic order whatsoever, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
intrinsically, it could potentially be really, if you're right, then this potentially could also be called into question, right? I mean,
Yeah. So that's maybe the, how to say, a point that I mean, what was nice with our study was that here we have the ferromagnetism
mhm.
well defined, but
Right.
you see that you have how to say, compounds where there's no magnetism, and so maybe the onset temperature is zero, right? And then you still have some anomalous Hall effect, and in these cases, we have to be very careful with the conclusion.
Yeah. No. I think you're
Um,
absolutely right. I mean, the only example I can think of otherwise is the spontaneous, time symmetry breaking anomalous Hall in the manganese tellurium, where even at zero field you see hysteresis loops, the
yes,
outer magnetism. Those are probably exception, but I do agree with you. I mean, your work is quite important in the sense that suggests that even when you have no magnetism at all, the well semimetal stuff could potentially be problematic. Yeah.
yes,
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay. Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other question for Johan? Let me see whether the audience have any questions. Okay. I mean, that's very interesting talk. I mean, I think
I,
you read.
I have a quick question.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Please.
thanks, Johan, for the great talk. I just had a question about this. You were talking earlier about this introduction about de-twinning samples using uniaxial strain and things like this, right?
Yes.
Um, for I guess I want to ask what is sort of the gold standard for X-rays under strain if you wanted to like de-twin, say, charge order for an X-ray scattering experiment under strain? Like, can you get good enough coverage to cover a good amount of reciprocal space with, say, a large strain cell?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I didn't actually bring the, how to say, I have other talks where I have, how to say, I cover more the technical, um, how to say, details of these experiments.
Hmm.
You're absolutely right that the strain cells often, how to say, limit your scattering volume.
Hmm.
For these experiments that we did here, we have how to say, we had very high energy X-rays, so 100 kilo electron volts, and so it's a transmission experiment with very small scattering angle,
Hmm.
and that means that we actually designed the the cell so that we are not limited by the cell. But if you want to have a large volume, of course, then so if you go to lower energies and you want to, how to say, have experiments like let's say like these, where you want to have the full volume, then you would hit or there would be big, how to say, dark areas of your reciprocal space. So it's a bit complicated to answer because it depends on your photon energy. It depends on a bit maybe on your crystal. So yeah, I don't know if can I answer, maybe you can, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I know. I think that's very helpful. I guess your follow-up question is like, who has these kinds of tools? You know, where are these sort of strain cells implemented on like sources for X-ray
Yes.
sources around the world?
Yes. Like we made our own cells and we are happy to collaborate. They are not very fancy. They are, how to say, these cells are to say we apply the strain, excite you, and then cool down. Mark Januszek, he also for the same beamlines this is at the Peter Tree in Hamburg. He made an inside you cell. So this is available to users. So we have a number of different designs of cells, and we are happy to collaborate. There's maybe others. There's Mitchell in Karlsruhe. They have these piezo cells. There's a number of groups that has piezo cells, and so piezo cells. So I would suggest that you say contact some of these groups and initiate. Typically, people are happy to collaborate.
Actually, I have another question I want to ask you,
Yes.
Johan. I mean, so you basically shown John Tronquata is sort of absolutely correct in the stripe description of the low energy spin and charge dynamics in the lanthanum copper oxide, right?
Yes.
Have you done an experiment in which you actually probed spin excitations in the entire spectra, on a detwined 214 sample?
Yeah.
I mean, what is the I know, but this is low energy excitation, right? What about what happens through the hourglass point and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
sorry, I have not focused on this part of literature, over the
Yes.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
what is the story on that?
Yeah, I mean, we have no data, but we would love to do. So here we have these two. That's the spin ordering vectors.
Right.
And what we are showing, or Daniel and Guillemina showed here, that if you put uniaxial pressure on, then this peak here disappears.
Right.
And that one here remains. And so we would like actually to do spectroscopy, low energy, study the low energy spin excitations on these two ordering vectors, where the one is suddenly not an ordering vector. And so then you really get the excitation spectrum at the same, how to say, in the same compound at these two. Well, one of them is no longer an ordering parameter. This is the experiment we really would love to do. The difficulty is that this static experiment was just barely possible within the, how to say, the counting statistics. And so to go inelastic is
Very
still,
difficult,
I think,
right?
ambitious for ILL.
So what's your sample volume? How much sample you can detwin in?
It's written in the paper. I forgot the exact volume. We did make the cell a bit larger. I would think it's like 100 milligram in that order.
Okay. That'd be very
Maybe
difficult to do any last neutron scattering.
Yeah. Yes. So we are
I mean,
maybe
is
looking
RIX a
into
possibility?
phonons.
Is RIX a possibility?
RIX, yeah, yes, we have a number of studies with, or we have one study out with RIX and uniaxial pressure where we look at the phonons.
No. I mean the spin excitations. Look at spin excitations of this.
Yeah. In principle, the spin excitations are there in the in the rigs. In this experiment we did, I think there was no big difference but that's a high energy.
I see. So, but I thought the current, state of the art modern rigs can get down to like 20 millivolt or 10 millivolt.
Yeah, we got to 10. We got to 20 millivolt. But we still did not see. Basically, we wanted to see uniaxial effects in the excitations, and we couldn't see any. And so we concluded that we need even better resolution to get this excitation anisotropy. And so I think this would I hope this would come in the next decade with rigs.
Okay. No, this is very it's beautiful work. I mean, this is really fascinating. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Thank you so much, Johan. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
And
John
thanks for the
must be really
invitation.
pleased, with all your with all your efforts. Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.